Hello and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It is the 19th of September 2024. I'm Tim Danton, Editor-in-Chief of PC Pro. Lee, who are you?
I'm me. I always have been me. Hello, everyone.
Lee Grant. I was hoping you'd go for a surname at least, Lee. Obviously, one of the world's most treasured contributors to PC Pro.
Is that the end of my introduction or the start of John's?
Good question. And that does bring us in very neatly to John Honeyball.
I'm Lee too as well today. I'm channeling my inner Lee.
How is that going to show itself?
You don't want to know.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe
Just
you can kick us.
be glad there's no video. Oh, damn, there is. Okay.
John, perhaps you could kick us off with the first story.
Yeah, as everyone will have been aware who has been following the news, there has been some quite astonishing attacks in the Middle East against the organisation called Hezbollah over the last couple of days. And I wanted to just cover off what little we actually know factually, because there's an awful lot of conjecture out there and actual very little hard facts at the moment.
And we should just clarify, shouldn't we, John, that we're talking about the technical side.
Absolutely,
we're not going to be speculating on who did what or anything like that.
We have no idea, because as I have just checked this morning, I don't think anyone has claimed responsibility, which is usually a fairly good starting point for this. But it was clearly a highly sophisticated and highly targeted attack against members of Hezbollah. And what basically happened was that pagers that they were using, for those who don't remember these things because they are quite ancient tech, pagers were radio receiver devices where you could send a message to a specific pager, and it would then sort of beep, and some of them would, the more sophisticated ones, would have a display, little sort of LCD display on it, and you could then read a message like, phone the office or phone home or whatever, and then that was your message. There was no reply, there was no communications, there was no back channel. It's just a straight sort of broadcast mechanism, and these were popular 25 years ago and so forth. In fact, actually, if you remember the very first episode of that utterly wonderful series, The West Wing, one of the plot twists in that very first episode, which was 1998 or 1999, was two people getting their pages muddled up and the chaos that ensued from that. So this is an old technology. So why were Hezbollah using pages, I think, is the first question, and what appears to have gone wrong. Well, the good thing about pages is they're extremely simple, and it is a broadcast and receive only mechanism. There's no back channel, and they're also essentially untraceable, because if your pager is in reach of the pager radio network, then you will receive as I remember, you receive all messages, but your pager responds to the one that's got your pager number on it. Okay, so you can't track where the person is when they receive the message. Now compare that to a mobile phone, where you've got cell towers, you have got all sorts of ways by which you could work out where a particular person was, and down to reasonable accuracy, just based on the radio towers itself. Once you then start thinking about the operating system on a phone, and GPS receivers in phones, if you could get some malware onto a phone, then you've got a very targeted mechanism of locating somebody. So it would appear that Hezbollah were using pagers because it could send out messages to a large number of people. We're talking here thousands of people, each with their own pager. And it would appear that the pages themselves were either modified in transit or were fake products that were manufactured specifically, or something along those lines, to include a few grams of high explosive and a trigger device wired into the pager, the basic functionality of the pager. Again, we don't know exactly how this was done, but it would appear that some people have identified a company called Gold Apollo in Taiwan as being the company that likely manufactured the product. with a huge caveat, because that is based upon the design and the labeling on the pager. Now, Gold Apollo has told the BBC that they had nothing to do with it. They hadn't manufactured these pagers, but that they had licensed their trademark to a company in Hungary called BAC Consulting. And the BBC website this morning says whom the BBC has been unable to contact. So who is this manufacturing company? Was it a shell company? Was it a legitimate company that had product intercepted? We simply don't know. But what is clear was that a whole bunch of these pagers were ordered. They were delivered 4 or 5 months ago and distributed out to various members of Hezbollah. And in one big triggered wave, they all basically exploded. And quite a few people have been killed out of this, and quite a lot of bystanders were killed.
We've had
as well.
hundreds of injuries.
Yeah, I mean, this is an astonishing attack vector. Now, how could they have done this? Well, maybe they just had a sort of a replacement battery and then created a modified battery that had some battery functionality, but also had a small bomb within it, or something, or whether it was actually something much more engineered inside. We simply don't know yet. Now, that was not just the end of the matter. Quite astonishing as that was, because if you think about what would be involved in getting into the supply chain of a company like this, modifying them or making them from new, and being able to have brand new pages easily registerable, if I can use such a word, on the pager network in Lebanon, this is no small feat. This is not a few disgruntled people in a lockup in Romford. This is a lot bigger than that. A lot more money, a lot more resources, and a lot more determination to do this. But that wasn't the end of the matter. The next day, which I think is yesterday, now podcast on Thursday, it was on Wednesday.
John, just before we move on to that, can we just Lee, in the discussion that took place yesterday when all this was happening, over Slack with a group of us, you mentioned why you were very confident it wasn't a battery overheating. Can you just explain why that is?
Yeah, just a caveat that, just repeat once again, we are very aware of what is happening in the real world and the devastation, loss of life. So we don't mean this to sound reductive or anything, but we are just trying to put a technical how did this happen sort of on this. But one of the early theories that came out was that a signal had been sent which overheated the battery. I even saw they dragged some media organisation dragged Kyle Weens from iFixit onto it, who basically said very much the same that I said in our private chat, which no, that can't happen. Yes, lithium batteries can explode, but not in a way that is going to do the amount of damage that has occurred here. When lithium batteries go, it's a bit like a sparkle on November the 5th. It's very bright, it's very hot, it's very intense, but it's quite short. It's not a combustible sort of thing. Obviously, you do occasionally get the odd puff of smoke. If you think of a laptop battery that's wrapped in a plastic, the cells can sort of inflate that, and there's a gas and there's a pop and stuff like that, but it's not what you would term as a bomb or anything like that. So I was racking my brains yesterday, as we all were, just trying to work out how this has been achieved, because as John said, this is complicated stuff to pull off. My theory, and this is absolutely my theory, is that for this to work, because of the delay of getting these devices out, and as John said about getting the pages onto the network, the pages need to work as pages for as long as they need to be pages. The poor people that have been using these don't need to suspect there's anything going on here. So the battery thing just doesn't work for me at all. What I actually think may happen is inside a lot of these pages, as part of the alert, is a little motor. It's your vibrate motor that you have in your phones and things like that. And the easiest way to do this is to take the motor out, because the motor's got a power line, you would then put your little package with your detonator and your explosive in, power it to the power line, and the moment you send a signal to that device that will trigger, that under normal circumstances would trigger the vibrate, off it goes. Of course, you can use the pager perfectly, or set the pager so it'll work normally without the vibrate on. So up until that point, it would work like a normal pager. People can go and change the batteries, buy new batteries, put them in. The pager just works. No one suspects a thing. But whatever the truth, what it turns out to be, it's a very clever technical way that they've done it, because it's not like the moment you turn it on, it goes bang. These things have had to operate and work for months as they've been distributed to the various poor people. And at some point, someone has been able to basically press the big button and set off the payload in one go. That's quite clever. Horrific, but clever.
Right.
Now, what then happened was the next day, another wave of explosions have happened, and these appear to be around walkie-talkies, which is interesting because that's an entirely different technology to a pager. Yeah, these are they have been identified as looking like they are ICOM IC-V82 handheld walkie-talkies. Now, let me immediately state here that ICOM is an extremely reputable Japanese company working in the radio space, amateur radio communications, and so forth. They have put out a statement saying that they haven't made this model for some 10 years, but they have in the past put out notifications about counterfeit products that have been available. So the logical thought here is, and it would appear, sources are saying, whether this is true or not we cannot say, that basically a whole bunch of these pagers were delivered and also new walkie-talkies were delivered. Now, these walkie-talkies can do some interesting stuff like D-Star and digital encrypted audio. So these are not just very simplistic radios. Is it possible that some very large, well-funded organization, potentially a nation-state organization, managed to get into the manufacturing or supply chain of the pagers and the walkie-talkies with a concerted effort here that they would set off the pagers, and then those people who they viewed as targets that they didn't get with the pagers, they would get with the walkie-talkies the next day. Again, this is very simple technology compared to, say, a GSM phone, but deliberately chosen as such. Is it possible that, for example, someone persuaded the people in Hezbollah that their pages were insecure and could be read by third parties, and that they needed new, shiny, secure, encrypted ones, and yes, here we are, I can supply these to you. I don't know, this is absolutely all conjecture, but to get two entirely different technologies out there to do a concerted attack over 24, 48 hours is, well, it's when I first heard the news, I have to say I thought it was somewhere between James Bond and Johnny English. I mean, it was so out there. It could really only come from a film script. Yet it clearly has happened. Maybe these walkie-talkies only kind of looked and operated like a walkie-talkie, but maybe they had similar pager functionality with explosives inside the walkie-talkie. We simply don't know. Okay, it would logically make sense to use the same kind of technology in both devices, even though one would not necessarily be obviously relevant to the other. There's an awful lot that's going to have to come out from this story, but from a technology point of view, it's fascinating, and from an almost a military point of view, it's I mean, it just boggles the brain, frankly. There is a wider topic here which I did want to touch on very briefly, which is, how do you trust the equipment that you're buying? Now, I am not for one moment suggesting that Mrs. Random Lady of 33 Acacia Avenue is likely to be targeted with an exploding pager. What I am saying, though, is that if you are a business, how do you know what it is that you're buying and where it's coming from? And I would argue that at least to put people's minds at rest, that the proverbial 99.999% of all of this stuff that's shipping around the world is entirely untainted and is going to work fine. Those organizations that work in the high security space have processes in place by which they will track product being delivered from manufacturer to their delivery, including every single place it's been en route. And so they have mechanisms to deal with that. That doesn't actually apply to you buying a new server for your small business or even your large corporate. But it does open up an interesting question about buying equipment that is unsealed, maybe second-hand and used. Do you actually know, and this is a much broader, obviously, picture, do you know where it's been? Do you know what's on it? Do you know if there's malware in its UEFI that you might not spot, and so forth? So this whole chain of trust thing in the much, much broader picture is still worthy of consideration.
Yeah, a similar thought struck me as well, John, is that you have to be, it should give everyone, especially people who work for big companies where there is room for corporate espionage and you are a target, where they should be conscious of the fact that the supply chain in particular is vulnerable. And so to think about how you are defending against that and how you are, the old word, mitigating against that threat. It's so huge a topic, obviously we're not going to be able to do proper justice here, but I think it's one just to raise awareness for.
And it's something which worth, as and when, and maybe even if more information about this particular atrocity of this week comes into the public realm, that we might revisit and think about again.
Yeah. Well, Michael, I'll just end on Michael Deer's point in Discord, by the way. You can always join us for a live discussion, pcpro.link/discord, where we are the lovely group of people who listen to the podcast live. And you are obviously all lovely, apart from the ones who slag off my hot hardware choices. They're less lovely. Join us and very much contribute towards the debate. And so I'll just bring in the comment here from Michael Deer, who is an IT manager, and he says, I always, with pre-owned kit, wipe and flash before use. It seems very basic, very obvious, but at the same time, I bet lots of companies don't do that. So yeah. Anyway, just good, I don't know, cyber hygiene, would we call it that, is always necessary. Talking about cyber hygiene, there's no one more cyber hygienic than Lee Grant. So, Lee, what's coming up next?
We're going to talk about Apple, because they've released iOS 18 in various forms this week. Now, we're not going to dissect this today and talk about the new features. I think mainly because I've only spotted two, and one of those Mrs. Grant mentioned, but they are good, but we'll save them for another time. But the reason I'm bringing it up is, and I guess it sort of fits into what we've just been talking about, because it's behind the scenes in the repair space, really. Tech manufacturers are having to change how they traditionally operate in relation to how devices can be repaired. So particularly with Apple, a quick short reminder is they're a fan of a process called parts pairing or serialization, which means that certain components in an iPhone, screens are the obvious example, they're software locked to the handset. And the upshot is that if you smash the screen on your phone and you try to replace it with a screen from another phone, things don't work properly unless you're prepared to jump through few Apple hoops. Now, right to repair legislation in the US is banning parts pairing, so Apple needs to change. And iOS 18 is the first time that we're getting to see what they're doing about it. Basically, since they declared that Apple said they'd sort this sort of parts pairing thing out. So, iOS 18 now has something in it called the Repair Assistant, which is designed to take the friction out of initializing replacement parts on an iPhone. Now, I haven't tested this, but iFixit have. And there's a wonderful report that they've got two fixes on there. And one is called a teardown technician. It's an awesome name. And a repairability engineer. You know, I need to get my business cards redone. I think I'd love a title like that. Instead of Pratt, who owns a shop. Anyway, one of the guys...
That's just your informal title, Lee. Don't worry about it.
It is. I think on Twitter I'm Screwdriver Fairy, but that's something else. One of the one of the engineers took an iPhone 15 on iOS 17 and then swapped the logic board. And the phone started to do all the parts pairing issues that you would expect. So warnings of unknown parts, pop-up batteries, the phone just not quite working, cameras not focusing, true tone missing, facial recognition gone, as you would expect. He then updated the phone to iOS 18, which he was allowed to do, and a new menu appears. And if you've got one of the newer iPhones, if you go to General and About, you might see there's parts and service history stuffed in there. I've got an iPhone 12 and it's not on mine, but it should be on the newer ones. And basically there's an option there basically to restart the phone in what's called diagnostic mode to finish the repair. Now, I'm not going to go into details about this because it's very long and laborious, but basically he couldn't yet complete the process. Despite restarts, ID verification, he was finally presented with a page advising him to take the phone to Apple for servicing. So all the hoops that Apple have meant to have swept away in this particular case didn't work. Interestingly, he replaced the old circuit board back into the machine and the phone worked perfectly as if nothing had ever happened. So it shows how much of a hold parts pairing has on this device. Now, clearly it doesn't work properly yet, which is disappointing, and no doubt there's going to be a tranche of YouTube videos over the next week sort of giving Apple a bit of a kicking for this. But Apple, if they choose to fix it, can sort this out pretty simply. So I'm optimistic that if this works nicely, it will just make something basic like swapping a battery or swapping a phone in an iPhone, it will just make it a lot easier. I heard someone take a deep breath then.
That was me. Sorry. I have read something, and maybe it only applies to the new iPhone 16. We'll have to wait and see. But basically, you can now tie the key components of your phone to your Apple account. So if you then try and take a battery out of one phone and put it into another, it will then tell you that this battery is locked to another Apple account, and you have to then put in the account name and password to unlock it to use it in this phone. Now, this is kind of like the reverse of kind of what you're talking about, Lee, which is this is to make it more difficult to swap parts. But the point here is about making it difficult to swap stolen parts, which have already been used and attached to a phone and thus attached to an account. Now, I think that's actually quite interesting, because anything that can be done to persuade that the nasty little scroats who try and do phone theft, if the word can get around that there's no point stealing these now because you can't strip them and then sell out the parts from it because they will be attached into an existing account, that has to be a good thing. But of course, this whole process has to work seamlessly and reliably, so we don't end up with, broken devices scattered in front of us.
John makes a very interesting point, and I was slowly sliding into there. He slightly preempted me, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Because at the same time that Apple announced that they were going to help with the repair, they also said, and I quote, they're going to extend its popular activation lock feature to iPhone parts in order to deter stolen iPhones from being
I'm sorry, Lee. I got in there before you.
No, not at all. No, I'm pleased you raised it, John. I don't know, you've forgotten. But basically, as John has exactly said, it's to try and prevent people nabbing your iPhone and flogging it for parts. And that all may sound absolutely reasonable. But this is Apple we're talking about. So earlier in the year, I wrote a feature about refurb and spoke to a US guy called John Bumstead. You'll find him on Twitter, who basically has pallets and pallets and pallets of activation lock devices. And for the uninitiated, activation lock is basically where what John has said. It's, let's say, a corporate machine, a corporate MacBook was all set up nice and secure, and it's been thrown in a skip. You can't do anything with that. You can't reset it or repurpose it or sell it on unless you deactivate it from the previous account. And this is where the problem is, because a lot of these devices are bought up by what are called ITADs. They're professional refurbishers who collect e-waste and business cleanups. And because the IT departments are not decommissioning these, they're locked up. Fine, no problem there. It's safety. We don't have a problem with that. Where the real problem is that to get activation lock devices unlocked, and Apple can do this, you need to provide receipts, proofs of purchases, grandmother's dental records, and things like that, just for a single device. And as John Bumstead explained to me, by the time he gets a pallet of MacBooks, he's about the fourth owner, and the original receipts are gone. So, and also when Apple removes activation lock, the device is wiped and reset, so the data on it is gone. So as far as Apple's commitment to repair and refurb goes, at the moment I can only give it really a 2 out of 10, because they can fix the iOS 18 initially if they want to. That's fine, but they need to come up with a mechanism which sort of sits in the middle of what John was saying about stuff being stolen, and where John Bumstead sits, where he's just got pallets of kit that can be used for parts worth millions of dollars, but because they won't be unlocked and wiped, so the data's not being used. It's not a case that these are fresh things that have been stolen that afternoon. These things have been kicking around the systems for months and years. They're all going to go into a crusher and a furnace, and frankly, that's just a crime against the environment. And we need these parts, and we need the components in them, and Apple still isn't allowing that. So you're right to bring this up, John, but there is once you get past the person who's going, oh no, my phone's been stolen, you go a few years down the line, it's globally it becomes an e-waste issue.
I've got a couple of devices here which are locked, Apple devices. They use a Gmail email account and a password. I can log into Gmail with the email account and the password. That's fine, but the password on the Apple account is not correct. Okay, and you then say, well, let's go and do a recovery, and there's a mechanism by which you can do this recovery. The problem is you then have to wait 30 days before it will unlock. But if any of the devices on that account wake up for whatever reason, the 30 days clock resets. So you get into a never-ending loop where you can never unset the damn things. So what actually should be possible? I mean, there's some of these things I will have receipts for. It's just, unfortunately, they get pushed to the bottom of the pile in terms of sorting out. I have got receipts for purchase of some of these things, so I'll sort that out. However, the key point here is you should be able to book an Apple Genius Bar appointment, take the device in. They should be able to unlock it for you. You sign a receipt of ownership against the serial number of the device, and they take a photograph of you as well, or whatever, to basically make it difficult but not impossible to unlock this device. As you say, Lee, return it back into normal operation.
Yeah.
I have no problems with it being difficult. At the moment, it's so difficult, it's to all intents and purposes impossible. And as you say, Lee, if you are a recycling company, surely you should be able to register yourself as an official recycling company and go through not quite a backdoor, but more of a sort of a bulk unlock process with Apple.
Yeah, there needs to be a middle ground, because at the moment there isn't.
So, Lee, I know you gave Apple a 2 out of 10 rating, but are you saying that they are improving or staying the same? Where is the movement?
Well, this new feature on the phones is designed to basically turn the parts pairing, reorganization, make it a frictionless process. Because at the moment you have to go through all sorts of hoops where you have to provide IMEI numbers and it's certifications, and you have to phone up helplines and get people to take control of the devices, and it's hard work, and people just don't bother. And that's the whole thing about, if you sort of want to simplify one aspect of repair, it's too much hassle to get it repaired. I'll just buy a new one, and that's the obsolescence problem. So I applaud them for absolutely trying to sort of do something to sort this out, because we know the whole thing's a nonsense, because and I know, going back to our top story about being careful about where your devices come from and things like that. But if you're taking a battery out of a working iPhone and shoving it into another working iPhone, it should work. Stop the nonsense. Who cares what serial number is on that battery and it won't work? It's just absolute cobblers for cobblers' sake. So the fact that they're doing something to make this easier is heartening. But make no mistake, as I said, this is because they've got a legislative arm up their back doing it. And there's more of this coming. So they're going to have to fix this quick.
And just one question from the floor. This is Ali Kelman on Discord. How about very old Apple kit? If we get a 2014 iMac Pro, is that historically locked?
No, they don't have any of that stuff built in at that age.
Yeah, it was basically called the T2 chip that's on the board. That anything, the old stuff, in the good old days, it don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a 2013, 2014 Mac Pro here, the wastebasket, the trash can one, and I could put Linux onto it if I wanted to. That's not a problem.
All right. Thank you very much. Let us move on to the third story, which is with me, which is, I expect wild cheering and whooping from the floor at this point. Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, is entering Wave 2.
Have they done Wave 1?
They have done Wave 1, John. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Did you miss it? No, do you know what? I don't want to be too harsh because I do actually use aspects of Copilot pretty much all the time. You know, I use particularly Copilot Designer to create little images and stuff. So it's not useless to me, and I do subscribe. But I must also confess that when I'm using Word or Excel or anything like that, I never use Copilot. In fact, it's just a little bit annoying because it pops up occasionally and gets in my way. But anyway, yes, we have Wave 2 because obviously Microsoft has bet so much money on this. So desperate to get businesses in particular to start using Copilot and start paying the extra monthly charge, by the way. It's going to continue to push this heavily. So what have we got in Wave 2? Got something called Copilot Pages. And I've read this a couple of times. John, have you looked at Copilot Pages?
I'm sorry, what?
Have you looked at Copilot Pages? This new
No, I
feature
haven't. I must confess I'm keeping well away from it at the moment because, was it £20 per person per month at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not inexpensive.
Then I'd have to do 8 or 10 Office 365 accounts, and not for the time being, thank you. I'm not saying never. I'm just saying not at the moment.
Yes, and that don't forget that's on top of your existing E1, E2, whatever the hell they're called,
E3.
licenses, E3 license. So yeah, you're probably paying, I don't know, north of 30 quid per month. Anyway, for the luxury of having Office and everything. Anyway, Copilot Pages, they describe it, and I just can't get my head around this. A dynamic, persistent canvas designed for multiplayer AI collaboration, which does sound so. Who just said to? Who said they? So CP Bullet Sponge has said, I usually only listen to the podcast on 1.5 speed. Listening live on 1 time speed, they all sound like they are drunk and slurring their words to me. Well, to me, it sounds like when Microsoft got into a room and, again, we're just on the source to work out this weird phrase, a dynamic, persistent canvas designed for multiplayer AI collaboration. What are you talking about? And I did try to watch the video. I missed it only once and I still don't get it. But anyway, that's new. That's exciting, isn't it? It's there to make AI generated content durable and editable. The idea, I guess, is that the team can work on a project together and all that kind of bananas, and you can, make it easier to work on a big project and have deadlines and all that kind of stuff. But I'm confused.
Deadlines? What? No.
Don't worry about it, John. Just remember to get that copy into me by Sunday. All right. Lee, what were you going to say?
I thought you said edible. Sorry.
Edible?
Yes. I just realised you said editable. Sorry. I
think you're just hungry.
I think there is a lot of that. But having done a bit of Copilot training recently, and I mentioned this in the podcast a couple of weeks, it does sound like they are outsourcing their PR to Copilot at the moment because no human being is coming up with those words in that order.
Yes, and just to remind people of what those words are, a dynamic, persistent canvas designed for multiplayer AI collaboration. What are you talking about, Microsoft? Come to me at the end of the day. We need to talk. Anyway, next up, they've improved all the Microsoft 365 apps. So again, this is if you are on the E3 sheet and you are playing for Copilot Plus, then you get Teams, you get Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Word, and all of these have been enhanced with the Copilot for some time. And now they are talking about, well, first of all, Copilot and Excel is now actually properly released because previously I think it was officially in beta. They've also announced Copilot and Excel with Python. And I'm going to read this because otherwise I'm going to get it wrong. This combines the power of Python with Copilot and Excel. Now anyone can work with Copilot to conduct advanced analysis like forecasting, risk analysis, machine learning, and visualizing complex data, all using natural language, no coding required. It is like adding a skilled data analyst to the team. It's in public preview, So it's not fully released yet, so they're not totally confident in it yet. But you can, because it's in public preview, you can download it and try it. So that's new. I did look at what they're promising for Copilot in PowerPoint. I didn't see much that was different from what they were promising before. The idea being, anyway, that you can tell the thing what you want it to do, and then it will. It creates an outline. You add to the outline, add some detail, and then you can say, "Oh, go and use our company filtered, our company approved images here, and tell it what you're looking for," and it will come and serve up a few choices. You pick which ones you like, and hey presto, you have a marvelous presentation that fits your brand guidelines to share with the rest of the teams. Now, the only real hit, and they hint at this actually in the blog, that Microsoft has so far had, the only surefire hit is Copilot and Teams, because everyone I've spoken to who uses Copilot and Teams actually does love it, because it can produce such an excellent summary of meetings and come up with action points for different people, and it is like having someone there taking notes for you. And actually, this is the best example so far. So now they just enhance it so you can ask it questions and hopefully get a better idea of things. So, but I don't really, again, see a huge difference in terms of that. And I tried to download to move to the new version of Outlook so I could check this feature. But you can now prioritize emails and Outlook like you've been able to do in every single mobile phone app for 79 years. So quite why it's taken this long to come to Outlook on the desktop is a different question. Anyway, there you go. That's the... sorry. So those are the enhanced Microsoft 365 apps. I won't go into what's happened to Word. There's also Copilot agents. What you are all wondering are Copilot agents. Well, I'll tell you what Copilot is simplified. I used Copilot, by the way, to simplify this page. So I do use it. Copilot agents are AI assistants to automate and execute business processes with a new agent builder for easy creation. And the idea here is that so remember, Microsoft is desperately trying to justify the fact that you are paying them quite a lot of money to have this tool. So they are very much building upon this idea of you're not just getting some software, you are getting a little mini helper, the equivalent probably of something like an intern to help you out. So don't worry about the fact you're paying 30 quid, 40 quid per month. You're getting another person, another bum on seat effectively for just 40 quid per month. And they don't take holidays. So they are describing agents as AI assistants designed to automate and execute business processes. So it could be as simple as a prompt and response agent, as they call it, or to ones that will take on repetitive tasks, and they will. So I just struggle to really work out how I'm going to use this thing. But anyway, the idea is it's a mini helper.
I have an idea. John? Well, if it can automate tasks and so forth, and business processes, and I can give it some prompts to do things, can I just give it a list of topics and tell it to write my RWC column for you?
I assumed you already had done that. I thought you created your virtual AI assistant to write that nonsense you've been giving me for years, John. Is that not the case?
Handbags at dawn.
You're telling me you wrote that stuff?
I did.
Lee is just shaking his head. I don't know if it's in agreement with me. I think just simply
be very careful, Lee.
It's an outrageous slur.
No, I can say. Although I was I was reading so in the next month's issue of PC Pro, Barry has done a big lot of interviews with people who are using AI in their jobs, and what I hadn't realised is that there were now ways that you could customise ChatGPT, for example, to not only do your homework but actually introduce typos into your homework, so it looked more like real copy. And I mentioned that for no particular reason, John. All right. Anyway, there you go. That is what is coming up in the Wave 2 of Copilot. Where are we? So, any questions from the floor, John or Lee? Anything you want to ask or add?
This is something I do need to look at. The problem is they're not doing it on the Mac platform in any meaningful way at the moment, and that's where my sort of daily focus is.
Yeah.
This is coming to you from a Mac. I should get it up and running on one of my Windows 11 machines and actually spend some more time with it, and even cough some money for it. It would just be quite nice if they sort of did a 3 months free for your E3 account as a sort of a teaser tempting thing, but rather than sort of demanding the cash up front. But then that's not the way of the world, it seems.
I think John's right. I think a lot of the hesitancy is there's a natural, am I going to be able to use this? And maybe a bit of free time will help people. I think from what you've said, Tim, nothing really sort of floats my boat. But with the exception of the agent, it's almost like AI needs like a clippy, or clip it for the Puritans, sort of thing, saying, I see you're writing a letter. Would you like some AI help? It's almost like they really need to push the AI, trying to push AI in a sort of, actually, look, you're doing this, we can do this, and show people how to use it. Because I think that's where a lot of this is falling down. They're just leaving it to your imagination. And frankly, people haven't got time to leave it to the imagination. They actually just need to be sort of showed, here's an example, do it.
Yeah, they are claiming success, by the way, Microsoft. They're saying in the past 18 months, it's grown by 60%. Copilot customers grew more than 60% quarter over quarter. I'm assuming not waste size, but actually just the number of people using Copilot at work. So, for example, they're saying Vodafone invested in Copilot for 68,000 employees. The only thing I would say to that is, yes, I'm sure that's true. However, I reckon the only thing they are actually using is Copilot and Teams. So I may be wrong, and because, like I say, there are some amazing things that Copilot can do. Because don't forget, it's built in the same engine, built on OpenAI technology, and we know that can do incredible things. In fact, someone wrote a letter. Oh God, I've forgotten who it was. He wrote a letter that I put into the letters pages this week, saying, having previously been skeptical about AI, he then used it to solve a problem, to work out decibels, to work out the formula for decibels for his website, so that people could find out the noise levels. Anyway, don't ask me questions. And ChatGPT anyway came up with a formula that he could just insert into his Squarespace page, and it worked. So there are very real problems that this can solve that otherwise would just be too big a hurdle, particularly for non-coders. So there's no doubt that it does bring benefits, but like you say, Lee, I think Microsoft is still struggling to convey that to kind of normal people, and probably to IT teams as well, not least because they're charging so much for it, and budgets are always under pressure. So where am I going to get another 50? Let's say I want to give it to 100 people. That's £1,000 uplift every month. So where am I going to get that from? Anyway, just to remind you, I know you're wondering, what are Copilot pages? Well, those are dynamic, persistent canvases designed for multiplayer AI collaboration. All right, let's move on to the next item, which is with you, Lee.
Yeah, Meta is putting Instagram users who are 18 years old and under into what are called teen accounts. Excuse me. The idea is to allow parents greater control, and this is being rolled over the next few sort of months. It will also extend to existing accounts held by teenagers. So what powers will this give a parent? It will set daily time limits, that can be done. They can block teens from using Instagram at certain times, basically nights and things like that. They can see the accounts that children are messaging. They get notice of categories that they're looking at. And that's really about it. Also, teens under the age of 16 will need parental permission to change the settings, while 16 to 17-year-olds can still sort of change them independently. And these new features are being rolled out in the UK, USA, Australia, and Canada. Now, Nick Clegg, the former UK Deputy Prime Minister and now Meta's President of Global Affairs, has said the move was intended to, and I quote, shift the balance in favour of parents when it came to using parental controls. But he did also admit that parents did not use the child safety controls offered by Meta. he also then went on to blurb that this change really tries, and it sounds like he's on AI for this one, this change really tries to very meaningfully shift the balance in favour of parents by basically putting teens into the strictest default settings over what content they see and who they can be connected with, what time they can spend, and crucially, if you're under 16, they'll have to ask mum and dad if they can change those settings. Now, all this comes on the back of the fact that teen accounts... the teen accounts came on the back of the fact that the Australian government has announced that it's got plans to introduce legislation through Parliament to raise the age children can access social media. It's not been quite decided yet, but somewhere between 14 and 16. But sort of before, there's not really too much more to say on the announcement at the moment, but before we sort of get into this around the table with my parents' hat on, is that on the one hand, I'm pleased to see that something is happening for tweens and teens, because it's often an age group which is overlooked in regards to sort of parental control regulations. Many systems seem to think that kids are kids until they're 16 or 18, and then suddenly the controls are off, and the whole unbridled internet is there for them to explore. And to use a very extreme example, it's either Peppa Pig or porn. The middle ground where parental controls need to relax slightly to keep up with age appropriateness is usually not there. So I guess they're trying to do something around that, but it does nothing that the whole system relies on parental input, kids not using fake accounts, logging out of and logging out of their teen accounts. There's no form of genuine validation. It also doesn't address the perennial problem which I struggle, anyone that's using parental controls will struggle with, and it's common with platforms like Roblox or YouTube, where you can't say, I don't want to see any content from this certain account. You can't so for example, on YouTube, if I wanted to block Mr. Beast, for example, from all my daughter's accounts, I can't do it. There's no built-in control for me to do it. And it seems to be a fundamental failing with parental control systems. But there you go. What do we think to that?
Yeah, well, what do you think to the point made by Running Dak? I want... what's it, Running Dak? Oh, yeah, who said this assumes therefore actually put the correct date of birth in when registering, which is most probably won't, will they?
No, and my kids' stuff is locked down as much as I can see, but I know with their friends they have 3 or 4 accounts for this app, 3 or 4 for that one, and it is absolutely Wild West out there. And if I think if their parents saw what they were really doing when they went upstairs to do their homework, their hair would drop out. But it's that is the problem of these sorts of systems. There's no proof at all that anyone is who they say they are.
Indeed. Okay, well, let's just leave that one there, because this is one of those recurring topics that we will always come back to. Let's go instead to Nibs. First one with you, John.
Yes, we all love the Fairphone phone. This is a Fairphone 4. We think it's lovely, and it's from those lovely, crazy Dutch people at Fairphone who do the Fairphone 4, Fairphone 5 now, the nice headphones that we've looked at before. And the great thing about Fairphone, of course, is designed to be taken apart, replaced, and so forth. Lee loves them, and I think they're damn good too, because they are repairable and so forth. I had a problem with this one, which is the screen would come on and off, and I took it apart and made sure that the ribbon cable that goes onto the screen hadn't fallen out or doing something strange. In fact, actually, for a giggle, I shipped it up to Uncle Lee for him to have a play with it to see if he had any ideas, and we basically concluded we thought the screen was broken in some way. So he shipped it back down to me, and while we were over IFA in Berlin a couple of weeks ago, I dropped in and spoke to the technical people at Fairphone, and they said they thought it was actually the proximity sensor, which decides that it's next to your head and therefore turns the screen off. And the best thing to do was to replace the screen, because the proximity sensor is in the screen. This being the old screen with the cable, this being the repaired phone, it's working fine. It cost me, I don't know what, 60 quid or something for a new screen, 8 screws, probably 4 minutes, and you're good to go. Love it.
For those listening to this rather than viewing the feed, John just held up one very slim looking screen and one much bigger phone. So you have to watch. You have to join us live. You're missing out on so much. What can I say?
And if you want to see a bit more of John's phone, it's in the Nexus 2 PC Pro, because where I talk about it.
Good plug there, Lee. Very good. All right, thank you very much, John. So it's now fully working, and you are happy.
For the moment, obviously, I will come back with a hurt and pouting lower lip if it stops working. But at the moment, everything's looking good.
All right, thank you. And actually, John, did Fairphone, was that covered under your warranty? I guess it should be.
Well, it was actually more by default. I believe they give a 2-year warranty, and it's about 2.5 years old. They did mention something about if I had registered it with them, I might have a 4-year hardware warranty. I just bought the part and shoved it in to solve the problem.
Okay, and next nib is up with you again, John.
Yeah, Ubiquiti, the UI platform that we either love or hate, depending upon your position on these things. They have a very good security camera platform in there called Protect, but up till now it has only worked with Ubiquiti's own cameras, which are extremely good cameras, very good optically, very good performance, power over Ethernet, all the things that we love. But they've just announced that early access beta version that's available now will work with third-party cameras over the ONVIF open interface platform for security cameras. So that is a good thing, and is definitely takes away a minus point against the Ubiquiti Protect platform. Our alternative that we recommend, of course, is Synology's platform, and especially Synology's cameras, which are also very good. The problem is I've been trying to buy 2 of their cameras for the last 6 weeks or so, and they seem to be permanently out of stock everywhere. So I don't know what's going on there.
I think they're out of stock, John. Okay, third nib is with you, Lee. But before I come to that, I'd like to know what on earth that awful pink drink is that you were drinking just now.
Oh, in that was some flavour of Vimto. I'm afraid you've hit upon one of my guilty pleasures in life, which is Vimto and its various flavours.
But it looked pink. It looked like it was solid pink. It looked like milkshake.
It actually looked more like that stuff that you gargle with at the dentist. I'll grant you that. But it's not your traditional dark berry Vimto. It is a light berry one of the name of which I forgot, but you can buy in certain retailers for about 50p a bucketful.
All right, thank you. Enough plugging for Vimto. Third nib, please, Lee.
NASA has fixed a problem on its Voyager 1 probe, which caused its fuel tubes to become clogged. Now, what makes this repair slightly more complicated is that Voyager 1 is currently 24 billion kilometres from the Earth. It is currently in interstellar space, which, according to NASA, is the region between the stars, filled with material ejected by the death of nearby other stars millions of years ago. Voyager 1 has been in space for over 47 years, and a fuel tube inside the thrusters became clogged with silicon dioxide, a byproduct from the aging rubber diaphragm in the spacecraft's fuel tank. Now, this clogging reduces how efficiently the thrusters can generate force to keep Voyager pointing roughly at the Earth so that it can still listen to the Archers. Now, over the years, NASA has turned off non-essential systems on Voyager to save energy, which means that Voyager is quite cold and fragile. There's also a risk that if they turn something off, it might not come back on again. So after weeks of planning and some jiggling with thruster heaters, they've managed to activate another set of thrusters. So all is well for now. So I think this possibly goes down as one of the most long-distance repairs ever.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. And the way that they can make these things work and communicate with, it must just be such low bandwidth from so far away. It's just incredible. Very, very clever. They're quite clever at NASA. That's my bombshell for this particular podcast. Right, before I go on to the Hot Harbor of the Week, which everyone will be voting for as hot this week, without a doubt, don't even bother thinking about voting cold, we have our event, our live event. It's free. Well, you may desire to buy one of us a beer, who knows, but anyway, it is free. It is on Thursday the 10th of October, and if you would like more details than that, and it's in central London and it kicks off from 5 p.m, we'll be doing the live podcast, as in live at the event, at about 6:30 ish. I'm sure that schedule could change, but anyway, open doors from 5 p.m. And to find out more, I will invite you to join our Discord server. where we have a 30th anniversary meetup text channel, and you can find all the details there. And yes, this is my way to make even more people join us on Discord, because I like heckling. All right, and I'm about to get heckled an awful lot because my hot hardware of the week is a foldable phone. Now, just imagine for a second, it's not me putting this forward, but this is in fact Mr. John Honeyball putting it forward. And then I think you'll like it much more. And also just pretend that I'm selling it much better than I do. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick photo of John from my screen. And there we go. And so you can see the photo there. That's on the front camera. You look great, John. Don't worry about it. And then I'm going to flip it open and look. Oh. And
wow! And John turns into Tim.
And John turns into Tim. And there you got a much larger John. And I just think foldable phones are nothing new. Okay, we've had the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold. Z Fold must have come out 5 years ago now, because we're on the 6th iteration at this point. And those were a bit dodgy, frankly. I remember seeing a Huawei foldable phone where we weren't actually allowed, this was before they were properly released, and all we were allowed to do, weren't allowed to touch the thing. We could just walk past this guy who was demoing it. It was so fragile. Now, these things, so if you're worried about the hinge and that kind of thing breaking, it'd be good if it broke live and air, wouldn't it? Anyway, that has been said to be good for rough, 13 to 20 years of folds, if you're doing about 50 folds per day. So, and that has been looked at by SGS, which is the testing body within the UK. So I think we can trust that the fact that the fold works very well. And then there are the other things that people worry about, like the crease. And I'll be honest with you, I don't even notice that. I just think it's a non-issue. So if that's a worry for you, then I would just cast it from your side. So in terms of the things that I really do like about this phone, I've been using it for about 3 weeks. The photos, apart from the ones of John, are very, very good indeed. Sorry, John. I am picking on you, aren't I, in this podcast? I apologise for that. So they've got these filters called hardcore filters. I think it's called hardcore. Do you recognise that, John? I think it's a Parisian.
I'm not contributing to this. I'm just having a flounce.
Are you, John? Okay.
I am.
All right. So they've got these filters built into it, and they're the best filters I've seen in terms of making your photos actually look. They say studio quality. Maybe that's pushing it a bit. Very much depends upon your subject, but it does produce excellent photos, including of Mr. John Honeyball. Of course, that needs not even be said. And it's also got a 3.5 times zoom. Now you can see some of that because I'm just going to put it up in profile in the video stream here, and you can see that is a chunky camera addition. And I must admit, the first couple of days I had it, I didn't really like it very much because of the size of that. But as time has gone on, I just stopped noticing it when I put it into my pocket. But B, just the quality of the photos it produces is so good. I just don't. It's just ample compensation. If you think about the other choices you would have, and the fact this is such a slim phone anyway, so it's 9.2 mils, the slimmest out there. Not much thicker. In fact, the same thickness pretty much as most bar phones, as you could call it. So the addition of a couple of millimeters, yeah, okay, I'd prefer it to be non-existent. But be aware that when I fold it out, that's 4.4 millimeters thick. So how are you going to put a nice camera into that? It's just physics, isn't it? Unless you just want to sacrifice photo capability, that's what you have to have. So other things to say about it, it's got the Snapdragon, it's got the latest chip in it, Snapdragon, oh god, I lose track of Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, let's call it that anyway. So it's fast. It's not as fast as the Samsung phones. They get more out of that processor, I would say, probably because it's so slim. So it's got to be obviously the cooling mechanism in there is not fantastic. So it's not quite as fast as those, but it's still a very, very quick phone. You can still play games on it if that's your thing, quite happily, and high quality games as well. And don't forget that big screen does make a difference when you're playing games too. So so I do think for gamers, I think there is something to enjoy there. What else? It's got a big battery, or to be precise, it's 2 batteries, so they're spread across 2 units. So you've got a 5,150 milliamp hour battery in there, certainly enough for even a heavy day's usage. When I was using it over at IFA, I was finding, because I was using Citymapper, I was using Otter, I was using the camera an awful lot. By the end of the day, yes, I did want to recharge it just to go out in the evening, just so I could be confident it would keep on going. But today, for example, yesterday when I didn't go out in particularly, it still had about 40% of charge left by the end of the evening, so it wasn't an issue at all. Other things to say about it, I could probably talk about the price, couldn't I? So it only comes in one configuration with 512 gigabytes of storage, and that the official price is £1,700. But as is always the case with Honor, that is not the real price. The real price is £1,400 because they have always immediately apply a £300 discount, and then they throw in extras. So you get, for example, headphones, you get a discount on the tablet, you get the charger, because there isn't a charger otherwise in the box, and yeah. So yes, it's expensive, but a iPhone 16 Pro, wherever we're up to now, will cost more than that once you put 512 gigabytes of storage into it. So so yes, it is expensive, but it's very well built. The Jeff Campbell has pointed out that it's got an IPX8 rating so every single foldable phone has an X rating. The first number there is for dust ingress rating, protection against dust ingress, because of the fact that you can still get tiny bits of grit into the hinge, and if you do, bad stuff happens. That's why it's X rated. But the 8 means that it's very well rated against water immersion. So I think it goes down to about 2.5 meters. So you can drop this perfectly happily into your bath, and nothing too awful will happen, as long as there's not grit in there as well. So there you go. That is the main things to say. Lee, do you want to ask a question?
I don't think I want to ask a question, but I think I feel like I'm repeating what Roche said on last week's show. Is basically, are we looking at a phone here or a camera? Because it seems that I've looked at the promo and it looks like that camera. But I mean, yes, it's going to be awesome because frankly, it's got a phone space to deal with. Whereas, you think of an iPhone, it's got to get the battery and the camera in there. So they've got a lot more room to play with. So obviously they've used their space wisely. But one thing I particularly liked in their marketing was the anti-aging engine.
Okay. Which anti-aging engine do you refer to, Lee?
Well, I thought, look at that wonderful picture of John that you'd taken, taken 50 years off him,
But and that's just a beauty filter, isn't it?
But that's not what the anti-aging engine is.
Is it not? What is it?
No,
then?
The anti-aging engine is intelligently cleans up system garbage and integrates available space on demand, which I think used to be called optimized coding in my day, but apparently it's now in the anti-aging engine. So again, I'm guessing we're all running the latest version of Android. How is Android the new voice? I haven't used it for a while. How is it now on big screens like that?
Oh, it's actually, well, it's kind of okay. I don't think they've completely got there yet, if I'm honest. So if I just log in, and so let's bring up Facebook. So I'll do a little demo. This is going to be difficult because I can't really see what I'm doing. But if you look there at the top, you can see that there's a little crease, a little line at the top. So if I drag that down, there, then it goes there. So you can have multiple, and you can do that with other apps as well. So you can have have two windows side by side. What it doesn't seem to be, there probably is a way to do this, and I haven't worked out what it is. I haven't found a way to snap two together. I'm sure you can, but it's not so intuitive that I found it yet. But yeah, so you can do stuff like that. And what is better this time is that the integration is so good. So so I'm using Facebook right now, and then if I close the screen, then I'm using Facebook still. So whereas before it would throw a bit of a hissy fit, and so that kind of things has definitely improved. But it's still not. It works best when it's simple. So for example, the photo example I gave you earlier, that's great. And actually, there's a demo I give to people. I take a photo of them, show them it on the front screen, and then just snap it open and show them the bigger photo. And it's hard not to go ooh a little bit at that. And the other thing it's good for,
yes.
the other thing it's good for is that you've got, and I know obviously you do get the big black screens, but if I, for example, bring up Netflix, then it is a nicer viewing experience to see it on a bigger screen. So there is that side of it as well. So let's just bring up. Of course, I've gone for a very dark. God, what's wrong with these things?
It's 50 Shades of Grey again.
Yeah, and you do get a slightly bigger viewing area than you would with a normal phone. So that there is a benefit there, and you can't carry a TV round with you all day, Cole. I'll have you know. So the other side of that is if you want to read a book, it's actually great. And actually, I do find it great for watching. If you really want to get into a story when you're reading, like a website, it's great because you can just get that much more information. So I don't dismiss it as a gimmick. By all means, I accept it's expensive. I'm completely there with you on that one. But I do really like this because it does give me tablet-esque features within the phone that I carry around in my pocket. So yeah, there you go. John, any questions before we move on to Hot or Not? Because it's 2:07.
Nope.
No questions. Okay.
Well, it kind of feels like a third-tier product with a first-tier price.
Why do you say it's a third-tier product?
Well, because it's not Google, it's not Samsung, it's not Apple. If you're going to have a different platform, is this first-tier hardware, first-tier technology? What's the App Store like? What's the support going to be like in 5-6 years' time?
So hardware-wise, it's better than Samsung's. I would say that categorically, just because Samsung's is still 10.2 millimeters. So I don't have any doubt about the hardware quality. The App Store, obviously, clearly wants to push you a little bit towards its own thing, but really it's Google. So I don't think there's a huge difference there as well. Support-wise, yes, Samsung does provide more years of support than Honor by standard. I think Honor stretches to 4, whereas Samsung goes up to 7. So there is a difference there. I'll definitely grant you that. But John, don't forget as well, Samsung's charging far more. So the Fold 6 512 gig, I don't have it up in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it's about 1750. So you are definitely saving money there. So I wouldn't really say I would reject your charge of tier 3 versus tier 1. I don't think that's quite true. All right, shall we do hard? Lee, are you any good at doing the simple poll?
Oh hell! Bear with me.
Okay, all right. But whilst we do that, I think I know I've pretty much this podcast massively insulted John several times, and so I think I know exactly how he's going to vote for this particular product. John, is the Honor Magic V3 hot or not?
I'm going to say not. I don't think these things are mature enough, and they've been trying for quite a few years. They're really quite expensive, And despite your contention that the hardware is as good as a Samsung and so forth, maybe I'm just being hugely unfair and relegating it to a third-tier product when that's hugely unfair on it. I haven't seen it. Well, I saw it when you had it in Germany, but
Yes.
it's not the sort of thing that really excites me, I'm afraid to say. So I'm going to give it a cold.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the voting as well. This is not going well for me. Lee, is the Honor Magic V3 hot or not?
Obviously, it's hard to tell because I've not had my hands on it. It's obviously a fabulous piece of engineering. You are impressed by it. You see a lot of kit. You know what you like. If you're impressed, then it's got to be good. The thing that slightly bugs me, is that thinner isn't always better. And you say that it's got a 5,100 milliamp hour battery in it.
Yeah, 5150.
Yeah. Now the Pixel 9 pulls in 4,700, so a little bit less. But of course, this thing's got to power 3 screens essentially. One screen and one big screen. So you can see why you're running out of juice at the end of the day. So you think it sounds to me like for this to be a winner, they could have actually letting its trousers out by a millimeter and shoving an extra 500 milliamp of battery in there. It sounds like they've focused really hard on thinness and sacrificed the battery to get that whopping great camera in there. So it sounds like the V4 might be quite good, but the V3 is just not quite there, even though those photos are fabulous, except that one you took of John where he does look like the man from Up. So I will say not.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Right. I am going to say hot because I do think the actual engineering here is excellent, and I think at least Honor is beating others for price. I admit that it's expensive, but sometimes you just have to pay for a bit of quality. So I'm going to add my meager vote to the other people voting on the simple poll to say that we have 3 hots to this is just on the poll on Discord. 3 hots to 20. Well, over approaching 30 hot not. So I think once again I've added to my record of my losing record on hot over not. I'm just going to stop bringing products.
No,
I think
you've
that's
got one
only
hand on the lemon trophy for this year. It's almost within your grasp.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm trying to find it. I did pick up something that I'm going to use as my hot hardware of the week in the future because it's cheaper and it's got a clever little skill. So I'm going to trail that for a future podcast where I might actually get a hot. Right. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to this week's podcast. We hope to see a few of you at our live event. As I say, join us on pcpro.link/discord and head to the 30th anniversary meetup channel for details. Until our next podcast in a week's time, it's goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.